Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. So, parcel has been delivered to the PO box. This is from James. We've discussed this and I've seen photos of this opal. So let's get it out and see if it's any better in person, because it looked really good on camera. And there you go. It's very decent indeed. So let's just crack this open and I'll dump it in a tub of water and we can have a closer look. Now, I was almost defeated by the plastic there, the plastic wrap, but we've gotten through and this is the piece. It is a bit thinner than I thought. When I first saw the photos of it, I thought it was a little bit thicker, but you can see here it's copped a fair bump there and it's shattered the crystal and taken off the edge. But it has given us a good insight into the colors, and if we just dunk it in a little bit of water here, you can see the color is just peeking through that crust, so we're not going to have to remove much at all. It seems pretty green-yellow towards the front, but gets pretty red and gets a lot of those warmer colors deeper down. So the reds, you can see the oranges in there, bit of yellow. It should be a really good multicolor stone, probably have a bit of everything in it actually. So I'm very excited for this one. This will be the top, the face currently, just because it's had that pretty solid knock. Whereas this side is pretty untouched, but even here you can see the color is just peeking through. It could end up being a double-sided stone depending on how thin it gets by the time we're done with the top. Now if I give it a quick dry, we'll give it away and then get the light under it and have a good look. So we're looking at just under 6 carats on this one. That's not a bad starting weight. Hopefully we won't be dropping any further than 5. I don't even think we'll get that low. But there's only one way to see, and that is to just chuck the light in behind it. And I'm not seeing much except for right there. So that has quite a deep chunk of sand going into it, just in this top corner here where that crust is. That's unfortunate, but who knows? It might not go all the way through to the back. It doesn't look like it does. And the rest of the stone looks really clean. I don't see any major fractures or anything like that. So it is just that sand pocket right in this front edge here. We'll have to grind down to it and see what it looks like. Also, I should mention that this is a White Cliffs opal, and White Cliffs opal can sometimes produce some of the best of this multicolored fire looking stuff. I'm not sure what it is, but compared to the Cooper Pedy, I mean Cooper Pedy you can get some amazing multicolored stuff as well, but White Cliffs does have this distinct appearance. Once you've looked at enough Cooper Pedy versus White Cliffs opal versus Minterby, you kind of get a feel for what's what. And yeah, this is a nice little chunk of White Cliffs opal. I wish it was a bit thicker, but you know what? We work with what we've got, and we're going to spin up the Dremel and get this one on the cutting table. Sintered diamond burr. We're just going to use the highest grit, 600 in the American standards. It's got so little to remove. You'd almost think about using a Nova Point and skipping the sintered diamonds, but trust me, you'll wear out your low grit Nova Points way too quickly and it costs money. Whereas sintered diamond burrs, sure they cost money at the start, but this has gone through so much pain, and look at it, it's almost like new, not misshapen, not wearing out too fast. It'll last forever, and it's never gonna need a replacement like the 280 grit Nova. You'll burn through those quickly enough already, might as well give it a break. Any kind of imperfection you're seeing, any kind of chip, any kind of scratch, like a deep scratch, any kind of sand, you have to get rid of it with the sintered diamond burrs. Most of the time you're going to end up using the 600 grit. I think every single stone I've carved you're going to use the 600 just to finish it off. Even if you're starting out with the 80, you just can't stop from the 80 and then go straight to the 280 Nova. Just at least give it a quick run over with the 600. This is probably the biggest tool I own. Incredibly helpful. Without it, I don't know what I would do. But you can see here, we're just getting rid of all of the corners as well and just working on these sand. We'll time-lapse forwards a little bit where I'm getting pretty deep here and I'm seeing a lot of sand, which is a bit scary. But if you look really close, it gets even scarier. There's 2 cracks running off that sand pocket. So at this point, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned here. It's not going to be the easy, dreamy carving that I thought initially, and I'm just interrogating it here and getting, yeah, a little bit spooked. But you'll see how we tackle this right now. Amazing color, but Houston, we have a problem. I'll pop up some pictures because it's a bit easier to show with my mobile phone camera with the lighting in a different position. You can see this sand pocket just here. Now this sand pocket, unfortunately, actually goes right through to the back just here. So huge stitch up. This edge is getting incredibly paper thin now anyway, And also in the picture it's easier to see because I've got the piece a bit dry. There's a crack that goes from that sand pocket slightly up here and all the way down here. So the best thing to do, like an infected limb, is just to clip that off along here. We'll end up with a little bit of a chip. It's unfortunate, it's got a bit of colour, but it is getting pretty thin now. But it will get rid of this sand and we'll be able to trim this edge back and you'll still have a really nice stone here, which you can see has plenty of colour. Right now it's a little bit in the shade because I'm in a tricky position here with my cutting station just off camera to the left. So you can see here, all of this will still be the original stone. Unfortunately towards the bottom edge here, it's also a little bit potchy. And looking at it from the edge, there's not much colour that goes right up to there. So we're just going to have to keep that one as a nice little curved bit. But all the colour really is this section here, which is what we're really interested in. Unfortunately, the sand has kind of destroyed this tiny section over here. So it's about splitting it. What I suggest, if you can't split it with your fingers along the crack that goes up both directions, what you do is work with your sintered diamond tool just to the side of the crack that you don't want to keep anymore. So leave this part untouched, just work along the crack but just slightly off to the side here, and eventually you'll make it either thin enough to snap off, or you could actually just go ahead and just grind all the way back here. But I don't know, I might try to keep a little chip here just for the memories of what it looked like beforehand. It shouldn't be too hard. I might even be able to do it on camera now because it is very thin and the crack just runs right through here. So if we just give it a, there we go, exactly along the crack that came from both top and bottom. I was wondering if it was a healed crack, but clearly it wasn't. That didn't even take any pressure. So now that we've got that, all we want to do is, once again, sintered diamond. We're just going to remove the sharp edges. We've gotten rid of all the other sand, and all we want to do is remove these sharp edges, and our stone is going to look somewhat like this. There's a little really jagged part here in particular that I'm not cutting my finger on, but that would slice the Nova real bad. So we'll get rid of him and then we get off to the Novas and we should be able to get a nice finished stone that looks something like this. Hopefully still end up with something around the 4 carat, 3 carat mark. It's just the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to sand sometimes. Let's carry on and get this on polished up. It'll still look absolutely amazing. What a gemmy little boy we've got, but we've got to get it to really pop out. So gonna have to remove that last little bit of sand and just trim off those edges before we can jump into the polishing. It's really important, guys. Don't damage your Nova points by skipping and rushing through that kind of thing. Just feel every gap with your finger. Even when you're doing the 280 grit Nova, just keep checking. There could be a tiny spot you've missed, but you'll be free to go with the 280, 600, 1200 and 3000 grit Novas after that. And it's really, really relaxing. Just be a little careful with the 280 grit and 600. I say it all the time. Those two will remove material. The 1200 and the 3000, they won't. You'll be able to use those for quite a long time without damaging the stone. Well, not damaging, but wearing away stone. So those you can be pretty confident to just go to your heart's content, finish when you're finished, whenever you want. This stone took about 5 minutes per stage, so not too bad at all. Pretty quick. It's a fairly small stone, so very fast. And then you can spend another 5, 10, 30 minutes if you want on your cerium oxide. It's not going to do any harm. Just keep it nice and wet as long as you've got the high quality cerium oxide. If you're using lower quality stuff, you're going to have to use it much thicker. But yeah, this is a thin milk kind of style. Don't keep dipping your stone in the water and washing it all off. You want to keep it on there for as long as possible and just let the felt just push it around and scrape over the surface, and you'll end up with a beautiful shiny piece of glass. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of another one. So I think it looks a bit like a snakehead at the moment. So neck here, teeth over there somewhere. And it's a very interesting stone. So from this dead-on direction that the camera is facing, perpendicular to the stone, you can see that it's got a lot more of the warmer tones, like the reds. But from where I'm sitting, coming in at a sharper angle, all I'm seeing is green. So it's a very good example of a multicolored stone that between the different angles, you do actually get a completely different stone. The way I see it from this kind of angle, with the light still remaining in the same spot, I see a lot of green. Whereas if I turn it directly ahead like this, from above you can see red, and from where I'm sitting you can still see green. Very, very interesting. Took a really quick and easy polish too. You can see here, it actually did just shine up really fast, which is always nice and welcome after having such a long battle with the sintered diamond. Normally the stone would not have taken so long. We'll give it a quick weigh. I'm guessing it's going to be about the 3.5 kind of caratish mark, which is lower than I first thought. I thought the sand was a bit more superficial. Okay, so 3.25 carats. Still not too shabby. You're always going to lose a fair bit on rough opal. I was considering it more like a rub because it did have that fracture out the front of it and you could see a lot of the color coming through that crust. I was treating it a bit more like a rub. But yeah, once the sand really just kept going, and then when it came all the way through to the backside, I knew we were in a bit of trouble there. But we've managed to get a nice little stone out of it. I'll leave it up to James after he sees this video on what we do with the back, because I'm actually kind of toying with the idea of grinding it back and getting the red on this side as well, and getting it to be a bit of a double-sided stone. It does border on getting too thin at that point though, which is a bit scary. You can also see just here, I can see what looks almost like a crack. I can't physically feel, or even if I'm looking at it under magnification, I can't 100% tell if it's healed or not. Whereas the other one certainly wasn't, and that's where this nice little S-shaped crack came out of. The crack is kind of a blessing in disguise where that sand was, because it did make it really easy to remove the sand. Otherwise, yeah, you've got to grind it back and all of that. Now I've got a fancy looking chip somewhere in the water bucket, which is probably completely useless, but I don't know. It had a bit of green color in it. It was kind of cool to look at. Always sad to remove such a major chunk out of it. That probably dropped the stone by maybe 3/4 carat or so. Now this stone could always be cut further and just get a calibrated stone out of this top part, and you'd probably end up with about a carat and a half, maybe 2 carats. There's also this potch section here that I consider the mouth of the animal. That could also be removed, and you could probably just slice it down here and just lose these 2 little prongs of color. You'd end up with something that looks somewhat like that. Always a good thing about carving is that you can continue to carve or cut or recut anything you want. Once you remove something, you can't put it back on, but if you leave it on there, you can always look back at it and consider it a little bit more and do a little bit more on it. I mean, this one could be cut there, could be cut across this little ridge here and end up with a small stone here, larger stone there. There's so many options. You never have to be too upset when you're carving and you end up with a stone that you don't like so much. You can always just recut it. And I've done that dozens of times. On that note, hopefully James can see this video as soon as it's uploaded and we can talk further in case we want to do something extra to it, especially with the back. Otherwise, it'll just be a matter of flattening out the back and sending it back to him. So he can get this little guy back in his hands and appreciate it in person rather than just seeing it on camera. I've been giving him updates throughout it. He was one of the people that likes to get updates as I cut the stone, so I just sent him a whole heap. He hasn't actually read them yet because I'm working on this pretty late, but he'll see them in the morning and I'll be able to show him this video in the next day or so, hopefully. Wish me luck on the editing, and I'll see you in the next one.